Should you train to failure? So first off, a little disclaimer here. If you're a beginner, if you have a history of injuries, let's say, I don't know, you have had a pec tear or a quad tear or something, no. Like, let's just get that out of the way. Beginners should not be trained to failure. Your form will break down. You'll probably injure yourself. And then, of course, if you have a history of an injury, you're just going to aggravate your injury. Like, oh, you tore your quad at some point, and now you're going to do squats to failure. Like, are you just asking to re-tear it? So for those people, no. Okay. For everyone else, it's contextual and it matters. And there are times where you should, and there are times where you shouldn't. And there are applications where you should, and applications where you shouldn't. So for athletes, let's talk about athletes first. In season, no. For God's sake, no. Yeah, this is why people get weird about me when I talked about how I disagreed with maximum recoverable volume. Okay, this isn't some attack on Mike Israetel or something. This is just an attack, and not even an attack. It's just a common sense comment. If you're in season, the goal is for you to play your sport at the highest level that you can. Training needs to take a back seat. That's it. Like, you don't need to be making gains in the season. That's what the off season is for. In season, you should be doing whatever it takes for you to maintain the highest level of readiness. And the thing is that, oh, well, we can plan it out, blah, 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 blah. But you really can't, because you never know when a game's going to go into overtime or something like that. For all you know, you could have a really hard game or a really easy game. You have no idea. There are definitely I talked about hockey before, and we'll just go ahead and I'll use my experience in hockey. Dude, there were games where, I feel like we barely hit each other. It just wasn't a very physical game. And then in another game, holy shit, every hit was just bone crushing. And so, I could barely even walk the next day. I remember that. I remember playing games where I was so beat up I physically could not walk the next day. If I was training hard, and I'm at my near max recoverable volume, what are the odds of me getting injured in the game? So there's just something to consider. In season, this is a no-brainer. You shouldn't be training to failure. You shouldn't be pushing your volume up. You should actually be doing the minimum that you possibly can to maintain your level of fitness. Does that mean that you can't push a little bit and try to gain just a little bit of conditioning or something? Probably you might be able to, but once you get up to the higher levels, no. You need to recover. Now, for the off-season, yes. Off-season, go all out. You can do maximum recoverable volume. You can train to failure. You can do all those things in the off-season. And my one point to you will be that it's not about how much you can do, but how much you can recover from. I think Matt Wenning said that. And that's the reality of the situation. If you take every set to failure, you're just going to fry yourself. That's dumb. That doesn't even make sense. That's not even good training. You're going to reduce the amount of volume you can get done. And we all know that volume is important. So if you're taking every set to failure, you're going to screw yourself so you won't get enough volume in. Alternatively, if you never go to failure, if you never push that margin, then you're not really giving your body a stimulus to grow at a certain point. Now, don't get me wrong. As I said, beginners, you don't need to train to failure. And probably for intermediates, you really don't need to train to failure. At least not very frequently. Maybe you have a stubborn lift. Maybe your back squat's stuck. Your deadlift's going up, your bench press is going up, your back squat isn't. And you're recovering from session to session, but it's just, it's that one lift that gets you. Your deadlift keeps going up, so you know that you're not overtraining. Your bench press keeps going up. Clearly you're recovering from session to session, but yet that squat just doesn't move. Well, that might be one of those moments where you got to push this, okay? And I will give you guys I don't want to say a comparison, but I have a point to make here. If you're familiar with Cal Dietz, triphasic training, Matt Van Dyke, there's this concept of supramaximal eccentrics. Okay, I want you to stop and think about this for a second. Supramaximal Eccentric, which means that you're using more than 100% of your 1 rep max. What is a supramaximal eccentric? But it's you literally trained to failure with a max, right? So we're going to take a max weight that's whatever you are. So let's just say your best back squat is 315. Okay? We're going to add weight to it. So now we're going to do 335. You're definitely going to fail. You won't get 1 rep. It's going to push you down, and you're going to get stuck at the bottom and won't be able to have the concentric phase. It's going to push you down. And that's all you're going to do, though. You're going to lower it as slowly as you possibly can, and you're doing a supramaximal eccentric. If you think about it, okay, I realize it's 1 rep, but that actually is training to failure. Like, you just trained a weight that you failed to move concentrically. But you did this intentionally, and you did this planned, right? It was smart. And you do that for 2 weeks. You don't do that every single week. You don't do that year round. You do that for 2 weeks, and then you move on to the next phase of training, where maybe you're doing, isometrics, or you're doing full speed moves. The point being that it has a time and place, and if you're going to do it, it's going to cost you. One thing I like to do is I like to take my shoulder presses to failure. Why? Because it's a pretty safe lift to fail on. Squats are not a great lift to fail on if you don't have a power rack, or at least like safety catches or something. You better have amazing spotters if you want to do that. But if you take squats to failure, a lot of people will hurt their back because their form starts to fall apart, right? So it's much easier to take leg extensions to failure. Think about that. That's the point that I was making about context. What is the risk to reward ratio? I don't think you should take deadlifts to failure, because there's just way too much chance that you're going to blow your back out, because you'll probably start rounding your back, and your back will wear out before your legs do. For a lot of people, when it comes to the squat, your back will wear out before your legs do. Like, a lot of people are limited by their back. You'll notice it. Start doing 20 rep breathing squats, and you'll feel like, oh wow, like your back is blowing up. Your legs could probably handle a few more reps, but your back is just like, no, like, we're not doing it anymore. So if you want to take something to failure, shoulder presses are pretty safe. Because what happens when you fail a shoulder press? Nothing. Nothing. It just comes back on your shoulder, at least if you have good form. It just comes back down to your shoulder, and you're back in the rack position. It's done and over with. Pull-ups. You can take pull-ups to failure. Do weighted pull-ups, and eventually you can't do one more. Another very safe exercise. Guess what happens when you fail at pull-ups? You put your feet down. Unless you do something stupid, like, I don't know, try to swing up to the bar and your hands slip off. Don't do that. That's your own fault if you do something stupid. Machines are great, though, and this is one of those moments where people are like, wait, I thought you used a lot of barbells and free weights, and it's like, yes, but machines have a time and place too. So, like, you can take leg extensions to failure. There's no risk of like the weight coming down on you. Not going to happen. Not going to blow a disc out in your back doing leg extensions. Same thing for hamstring curls. You can take hamstring curls to failure. Guess what happens when you fail a hamstring curl? Nothing. Nothing. It just, like, nothing lands on you. Nothing smashes you. You can do this with, the different machine presses and stuff like that. You can do all kinds of machine work and not be in danger of the weight coming crashing down on you. Should you do snatches to failure? No. Should you do cleans to failure? No. But, you could hop into a hack squat machine and take those to failure. Like, what happens if you fail? Oh, nothing. Nothing. You pull the safety catches back in place and you're good. The Smith machines aren't bad either, actually. I know everyone's anti-Smith machine, but Smith machines are an opportunity for you to take something to failure. And from all the Smith machines I've seen, if you get pinned at the bottom of the squat, you just rotate the bar a little and boom, it's in the catches. You walk out. So, like I said, context matters. Certain movements don't offer themselves to training to failure very well. Like, I would not try to front squat to failure. I wouldn't do that. I've done back squats to failure, but mind you, I've been back squatting for how many years? I feel like my form is good enough that I can trust myself to take it to the point where I can't do another back squat. Front squats, no. Overhead squats, no. Um, I don't even like taking bench presses to failure. I think taking bench presses to failure is a bad idea, because a lot of people get themselves into a position and they end up with a shoulder injury, but you can certainly take a dumbbell bench press to failure, because what happens, you just let the weights fall to the sides. Unless you're at I don't know, one of those gyms where they don't let you drop weights and use chalk and all that stuff like that. That's not a real gym. That's just a place stealing your money. They're giving you a gym membership and hoping that you don't come in. So, that's not to say that there aren't people who are training their asses off at those places. I'm not saying it's not a real gym in the sense that somehow you can't get stronger training at those places. I just don't like the business model. I would much rather run a gym where 100% of the people that have memberships are actually coming in and training. I don't want your money if you're not coming in, but that's not a very good business model, which is why you should not take business advice from me. But that's another story. The point being, there's a lot of things that you can do to failure. There's a lot of movements that are safe to do to failure. There are times in your training program where you might want to take something to failure, especially if you're in the off season. And then for like bodybuilders, I don't mean this in like a disparaging way, but like you guys don't really have an in-season, off-season. Like there isn't a consequence for you. If you're getting down to the last weeks right before a show and you're a little bit weaker, like it doesn't hurt you. Like no one cares how much you lift. They just care how you look on stage. So, if Ronnie Coleman can make his biceps bigger lifting 5-pound dumbbells, no one cares. Like that doesn't count against him. And I purposely chose Ronnie because he lifted heavy as hell. Powerlifting? Yeah, like the closer you get to a meet, probably shouldn't be training to failure. Save that shit for like when you're way out, and you're trying to put on some hypertrophy, muscle mass there, maybe moving up in weight classes. That's not a bad time for you to do it. The closer you get, the cost of you smashing yourself, your nervous system and muscles and everything like that, you should be doing heavy singles. You should be near max, obviously, in those last couple weeks ramping up to a competition. But I think, if you started taking sets to failure in your accessory work, I think that would definitely, I don't think it would. I know it would. I know it would harm you. Like, it would screw you. So, there you guys have it. That's my opinion on training to failure. There's a time and place for it. I'm not against it. I think that some people overdo it. I think that bodybuilders promoting things like take every set to failure are full of shit. I don't think that they really take every set to failure. I think they take every set to really hard, which isn't the same as failure. If you guys look for it, you can find a video of Tom Platz. You should watch this. Doing leg extensions to failure. That's training to failure. Tom Platz knew how to train to failure. So if you guys are interested in what it's like to actually train to failure, watch him actually take that thing to failure. That is brutal. That is absolutely brutal. Very few people have the mental capacity to do that. You have to really want to hurt. A lot of people don't want to train to failure because it hurts. So, and I don't blame you. And here's the part that matters, I guess, the most actually is, do you need to train to failure? And the answer to that is definitely no. No, you don't need to train to failure. Can you? Yes. Should you? Sometimes it might be optimal in very specific contexts. Do you need to? That's a different question. You don't absolutely need to. It could be better than what you're currently doing, but certainly there are many ways to make progress where you don't have to train to failure. You may need to get close to failure. You do need to push yourself. Your body needs to have a reason to adapt, right? So if we're always lifting submaximal weights and doing really easy training, there's no real stimulus to force your body to make adaptations. But certainly you don't need or have to train to failure. Even if it might be more optimal in certain situations, it's not like that's the only way to do these things. That's like people that tell you, like, you have to back squat. And I'm like, no, You have to squat. You have to squat. But, like, you don't have to back squat. I mean, for God's sake, how many different squat variations are there? I mean, you could do belt squats, you could do box squats, you could do front squats, overhead squats, you can do hack squats, you can do sissy squats, you can do so many other squat variations. Do you need to squat? Yes, you need to do some variant of a squat, but it doesn't have to be a high bar back squat, or it doesn't have to be a low bar back squat. Like, there's so many options. That's like people that tell you, like, oh, you need to whatever. I don't care what it is, insert the thing. And it's like as if there aren't 50 other movements that accomplish the same thing. Like, do you need to press? Yes, you need to press. But fucking pick one. Like, you can overhead press, you can behind the neck press, you can bench press, you can incline press, you can dumbbell press, you can, just pick something. Like I said, the machines and dumbbells definitely make it easiest for people to take things to failure. I mean, shit, you could do, you want to squat to failure and you want to use free weights, you could do dumbbell, like the Bulgarian split squat, which I just call like a single leg split squat. But if you put Bulgarian in front of it, it's hardcore. What happens if you take this to failure? Oh, you just let go of the dumbbells. Don't do it with a barbell on your back because you won't be able to get out of it. But, like, yeah, like you want to do single leg squats to failure, do it with dumbbells. Because whenever you hit failure, you just let go of the dumbbells and you're okay. Like, no harm done. It's not like it's going to, I don't know, tip you over and slam your face into the floor. So, you've got a lot of options. And like I said, there's a time and place for it. That's why you want to hire a coach sometimes if you don't know. But I am going to sit here and tell you that certainly people need to stop being polarizing about this and being like, never train to failure and always train to failure. And it's like, okay, maybe there's a middle ground where it's like sometimes train to failure and in very specific contexts and only with certain movements. Because I don't think anyone should ever deadlift to failure. Unless, of course, you're competing. If you're a strongman competitor, then maybe that actually would make sense for those people, but only because it's part of their sport. That's not optimal training. That just happens to be part of the sport. I mean, getting hit, is part of football, but I don't think that that's optimal training for you to just have people, oh, hey, just headbutt me over and over again. It's not going to make you a better football player. Like, oh, I'm a boxer. Just punch me in the face over and over and over again. Well, that's part of the sport. But that's not going to make you a better boxer if you just stand there and have someone punch you. So I hope you will get my point here. That, sometimes you do have to train to failure, even in a deadlift if you're a strongman competitor, because that's part of the sport. But otherwise, it's not optimal training. That's not the best way for you to make progress. And so I would recommend to you to be very judicious in your application of training to failure. Choose a time where you have great recovery resources. You're in a caloric surplus. Don't do it while you're dieting. Make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. And make sure you're taking days off. Don't be one of those people that train 7 days a week for 3 hours a day every time, and then you're trying to train to failure on top of it. That's just going to lead to injuries. That's going to lead to muscle strains. It's going to lead to, you're just going to bury yourself. So don't do that. Make sure it happens during a phase where you're getting plenty of rest, plenty of food, and, that's a good time, especially off season. That's a good time for you to use that tool.